Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about parts of speech, and these include nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. Let's dive right in. Let's start with nouns. A noun is a person, place, or thing. But there are very many different types of nouns. We're not going to go through an exhaustive list, but let's talk about a few of them. Let's talk about proper nouns. Proper nouns refer to a specific person, place, or thing. For example, my mom and I visited Red Deer College. Red Deer College is a proper noun because it refers to a very specific place. Professor Cowan teaches at Red Deer College includes two proper nouns. Professor Cowan, which refers to me as a specific individual and professor, and Red Deer College. Finally, Professor Cowan drives a rusty Buick to Red Deer College. We have three proper nouns, Professor Cowan, Red Deer College, and the Buick, which receives an uppercase letter, because like the other proper nouns, it refers to a very specific thing, in this case, a brand of car. Conversely, we have common nouns, and they refer to a generic person, place, or thing. They do not begin with an uppercase letter. So for example, I like to watch television shows, including The Simpsons. In this case, we have the common noun television shows, because it refers to something generic, followed by a proper noun, The Simpsons, the very specific television show that I watch. We also have concrete nouns and abstract nouns. Concrete nouns refer to nouns that can be experienced by your five senses. So for example, the rain touched my face. The rain can feel wet and cool, and I can also experience the sensation of my face with my five senses. Abstract nouns, by contrast, refer to ideas, qualities, or values, and they generally cannot be experienced by your five senses. So for example, our friendship was forged in the fires of turmoil. Here, friendship, fires, and turmoil are all nouns. But friendship and turmoil are abstract nouns because they express ideas and cannot be experienced by your five senses. Fire, on the other hand, is a concrete noun because it burns hot and I can feel that heat. Let's move on to count nouns versus mass nouns. A count noun is a noun that can be counted. It has a singular and a plural form. For instance, if you can put an S on the end of the noun and it still makes sense, it's a good chance you have a count noun. For example, I need an apple for the recipe. We can use a plural form. I need 5 apples for the recipe. Because the noun apple can be pluralized, we can put an S on the end and it still makes sense. We know that apples are count nouns. It's different, however, with mass nouns. A mass noun is a noun that cannot be counted, and it generally cannot be pluralized. This means that you cannot put an S on the end of the noun and still have it make sense. Let's try this example. Yesterday, the kitten sat in the sunshine. Let's try to pluralize it. Yesterday, the kittens sat in the sunshines. Both kitten and sunshine are nouns, but sunshine is a mass noun. It can't be counted and it cannot be pluralized. So it sounds weird when we put the S on the end of this word. Let's try another example. I need an apple and salt for the recipe. Let's see if it's a count noun or a mass noun by pluralizing. I need 5 apples and 5 salts for the recipe. Sounds a little weird. And that's because both apple and salt are nouns, but salt is a mass noun. It can't be counted or pluralized. But if we want to specify how much salt was needed for that recipe, because we cannot pluralize it, we need to add in what's called a counter. And a counter is a unit of measurement. So for example, I need an apple and 5 teaspoons of salt for the recipe. So in this case, I'm not going to pluralize salt, but I am going to indicate with countable measures, count nouns, teaspoons, how much I need for this given recipe. Okay, collective nouns. These can also be quite tricky, but they refer to a group or people of things as one. So for example, the audience cheered loudly at the Eminem concert. The audience here is composed of multiple individual audience members, but we talk about them as a whole, as a group. Let's take another more difficult example. The faculty at RDC is fantastic. Indeed, RDC faculty never hesitate to write solid reference letters for their students. Okay, here's where it gets tricky. It can be really quite difficult to tell whether you need to use a singular or plural verb or pronoun for collective nouns. So here's the general rule of thumb. When the members of a collective noun act together as one unit, you need to use singular verbs or singular pronouns. So for instance, the faculty at RDC is fantastic. In this case, we use the singular verb is rather than the plural verb are because we were talking about the faculty as a whole unit. When the members of the collective noun act individually or at separate times, however, we use a plural verb or pronoun. So for instance, indeed, RDC faculty never hesitate to write solid reference letters for their students. In this case, we want to use the plural verb write rather than the singular writes and the pronoun their because the faculty each individually write reference letters and they do so at different times of the year. That is to suggest that they do not write one big reference letter as a group. So again, when you need to figure out whether to use singular verbs or pronouns as opposed to plural verbs or pronouns with a collective noun, you need to figure out whether that collective noun is acting together as a solid single unit or whether they're acting individually as members of that unit. Let's move on to pronouns. A pronoun is a word that replaces or stands in for a noun. And we use pronouns to refer back to an originally stated noun. Pronouns thus help us avoid repetition of given nouns. And pronouns can include she, he, his, her, their, our, mine, they, we, and it. So for example, Professor Cowan loves to eat spaghetti. She is also fond of garlic bread. She is the pronoun that refers back to me, Professor Cowan. Remember that we cannot use a pronoun if we have not already first specified the noun to which it refers. So for instance, if I just said she loves to eat spaghetti, she is also fond of garlic bread, we would be wondering who is fond of spaghetti and who is fond of garlic bread. So we need to specify at the very outset to which noun we're affixing our pronoun. Adjectives. Adjectives are a word that describe a noun or a pronoun, and they can identify the quality, size, or number of a given pronoun or noun. Now, there are various different types of adjectives. We're not going to go through all of them, but let's take a look at a few of them. Descriptive adjectives will identify the characteristics or qualities of a noun or pronoun. Descriptive adjectives add detail to that noun or pronoun. For instance, the graffiti in the McDonald's bathroom was cartoonish and graphic. We also have quantitative adjectives. And quantitative adjectives identify the number or the amount of a given noun. For instance, Professor Cowan's Buick has a little rust on its back fender. So here we have the adjective little, which identifies the amount of rust on my back fender. We also have demonstrative adjectives, and these point out specific nouns. They answer the question, which one? Demonstrative adjectives include that, this, those, and these. So if I want to know which pig has a curly tail, I'll use the demonstrative adjective, that pig has a curly tail. Conversely, if I wanted to know which class bores me to tears, I could specify that this class bores me to tears. Hopefully, though, that's not the case. Let's move on to verbs. Verbs are an action or a mental or physical state of being. For example, RDC instructors care deeply about their students. Care is an action, and that's what RDC's instructors do for their students. What about this one? Hamlet asks to be or not to be. That is a question. We know that asks refers to an action, but be refers to being, which is also a state of existence or non-existence. And this be is itself a verb. It refers back to a state of being. Other state of being verbs include was, were, am, is, and are. Just like an adjective modifies a noun, adverbs modify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. There are many different types of adverbs, but here are just a few of them. The adverb of manner. These adverbs describe how an action is performed or how something occurs. So for instance, Professor Cowan dances gracefully in the rain. Here, the adverb is gracefully because it describes how I'm doing the action or the verb of dancing. We also had adverbs of time, and they identify when a particular action takes place. And adverbs of time normally occur at the start or the end of a sentence, and they can include never, lately, always, today, sometimes, usually, so far, and yesterday. So for instance, Professor Cowan has not been to the gym lately. Lately is an adverb because it modifies the action of going to the gym and it specifies when I have or have not been. We also had adverbs of place, and these identify where a verb is happening. They can include here, there, everywhere, and nowhere. So for example, crime is everywhere in Gotham City. Everywhere is describing the action of crime as it occurs in Gotham City. Okay, we're in the final stretch now. Prepositions. Prepositions identify the relationship between a noun or a pronoun and another word. A preposition will link nouns and pronouns to other parts of the sentence. They tend to describe the position of that noun or the pronoun, or the way in which something occurs, or the time it happens. So for instance, the dog sat on the floor. If we want to know where the dog is sitting, it identifies, the word on identifies that relationship. Next we have conjunctions, and they join words, phrases, or clauses together. Conjunctions can be remembered by the acronym FANBOYS, which include for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So for example, I like to walk and skip, but I hate jogging. And but are both conjunctions. We're going to be talking about conjunctions at length in our lectures on comma usage, so we don't need to go into them in any great detail here. Instead, what I want you to remember is the acronym. FANBOYS, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And this is going to help you remember your conjunctions. Finally, we have our interjections. And interjections are fun because they are a short exclamation that expresses strong emotion. So for instance, ouch, you stepped on my foot. Ouch is an interjection because it expresses strong emotion. Conversely, we might be able to say, wow, Professor Cowan is so smart. And clearly this is one of my favorite interjections because it is a short exclamation of how brilliant I am. I'm joking. Sort of. Okay, now that we know the different parts of speech, let's try to put them into practice. What I want you to do is to color code all the different parts of speech in the sentence below. Whoa, the brown fox slyly slinked by the gate and into the kitchen. It left a mess everywhere. Okay, good luck, have fun, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me in class.